going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Friday afternoon. And people were waiting for this. People were wondering and waiting, what would Erik ten Hag have to say when he spoke to the assembled media at Carrington ahead of tomorrow's clash against Brighton and Hove Albion at Old Trafford, 3 o'clock kickoff, not televised. This was, though, and that is his press conference. He was asked questions about a variety of topics, a lot of questions going into this one. What's the latest when it comes to Jadon Sancho? What was the latest when it comes to Anthony? His thoughts on Harry Maguire and all of that going on in the week. Is Martinez fit? Is Lindelof fit? Is Amrabat ready? There were so many questions to get into, and to be honest, not too much was given away, really, in this press conference. We shouldn't really be surprised, realistically, but it was KG and not the comedian. And I saw KG. I tell you what, let me tell you a story about Gavin Carey, yeah? Because I was speaking, you will have noticed, we've got a new thumbnail. We've got a new thumbnail in on this one, yeah? And I was chatting to Josh, and we were sort of saying, oh, we want to get a screen grab for the thumbnail. So I'm waiting. I've got it up on my phone. I'm waiting. Soon as I was just about to go for a screen grab, KG tries to call me. Everything starts breaking around me. I thought I've seen him in the chat. That's why I'm telling this story, because he'll know. He'll absolutely know. It's just, KG, man. KG. Nevertheless, there was a lot spoken about in this press conference, as I mentioned. Questions about Jadon Sancho, questions about Anthony, questions about team news or anything like that. KG says, we'll just call and say, I'm going to watch it live. And here he is. There he is. KG as I live and breathe. Yes, KG the comedian. Mr. The Comedian, excuse me. Let's get straight into the questions, because that's what you're here for. You're here for the questions, you're here for the answers, and you're here for the analysis. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well. First question was the one that most people were expecting regarding Jadon Sancho. It was actually from Simon Stowe. He said, Erik, hi. It's always a hi. Hi, Erik. Jadon Sancho. Can you how long can you drag out the ums? Erik. No, he said, can you clarify if Jadon Sancho is in the squad tomorrow? A lot's happened, that's an understatement, Simon, since the Arsenal game. Can you give us an indication as to what's happening and why? And this is why, when you ask Erik ten Hag a question in the press conference, don't do a two-parter. Ask one question direct up front, because if you sort of backload it and put the important bit at the end, he won't answer it. He'll just guide past that like it wasn't there. And that's what he did. Once again, the question was, can you clarify if Jadon Sancho's in the squad tomorrow? A lot's happened since the Arsenal game. Can you give us an indication of what's happening and why? And Erik ten Hag said, we played very well against Arsenal. We trained very well. We played very well. We deserved much more at Arsenal. It was not on our side. That was the outcome of our analysis. Last 2 days we came back. We are ready. We are really looking forward. We deserved a draw. We should have won there, but we didn't. So, he didn't answer anything about Jadon Sancho with that question. Proper Rishi Sunak settings. Rishi ten Hag was sitting at Carrington today because just didn't answer it. Just didn't even say Jadon or Sancho once in that answer. But don't worry, he didn't get away with it. I mean, full on, like, dodging the bullets. They were just Sancho questions. I mean, I would try and do like a Matrix thing, but I would probably break my chair. The point being is, he didn't answer about Sancho. He just said, look, I thought we did really well against Arsenal. You know, one of those ones, when you're at a job interview, what's your greatest failure? Well, I could tell you what my greatest failure is, but I'll tell you my greatest accomplishment. It's not what we really asked, though, is it? You know, very much job interview settings. Nevertheless, after saying that, and to be honest, I kind of agree with his analysis. I thought we did well against Arsenal, and we were unfortunate. It was not a 3-1 game. Nevertheless, Simon Stone goes back to it and says, with all due respect, Erik, I asked about Jadon Sancho, so can you give us an update on that? That's what you need. Short, sharp, sweet when it comes to Erik, because if you leave that question at the end, the important bit at the end, he just won't answer it. So you've got to ask him up front. You've got to be direct. So the second part was, with all due respect, Sancho. That's what I asked about. Jadon Sancho. And this is what Ten Hag said, and it was very short, and it's really the only real update we got specifically on Sancho, which actually, bear in mind, just thinking about it, Erik ten Hag never uttered the words Jadon Sancho in this press conference. Go back and try and find it, because he never said it. He never said his first name. He never said his last name. I don't even think he indirectly referenced Jadon Sancho in this press conference, yeah? Nevertheless, when he was asked about Sancho, so what's the update on that? He said, quote, "I think everything is said. The squad is strong, in good spirits, and a good mood going into the game." Again, not really saying anything about Jadon Sancho, not really saying anything about the situation, not really saying anything, even referring to the statement. I kind of half expected him to say, look, there's a statement out there, we'll leave it at that. He didn't even reference the statement. He just said nothing. Zilch, zero, nothing at all regarding Jadon Sancho. Now, take that for what you will. It could be out of sight, out of mind. It could be just... not even no comments. I'm just going to, if they ask me a question about him, I'm just going to answer something else. I'm just nothing. And I tell you what, in retrospect, sitting back here, it's like a wine test, isn't it? We have to swirl it around. What kind of notes are you getting? Now, sometimes in managerial press conferences, you swirl around the wine. He goes, I'm getting notes of bullshit. Quite a lot in press conferences, unfortunately. But it was kind of just nothing. He just wouldn't talk about it. Which I think is, after everything that's happened in the last week or 10 days or so, that's probably the best course of action, isn't it? You know, who does the song? You say it best when you say nothing at all. Is that Ronan Keating? It might be. And I didn't think 7 minutes into this show I'd be going into a Ronan Keating reference, to be honest with you. But I think it's true. And I think we could all embrace a bit of Ronan Keating in our lives, yeah? You say it best when you say nothing at all. And I think that's what we've learned in the last sort of 10 days or so. If nobody says anything, that's probably for the best. The fact that he didn't even reference Jadon Sancho by name, probably for the best. The fact that he hasn't really commented on Sancho's future, I mean, long-term, short-term, current, present, anything like that, the fact he hasn't spoken about it at all is a good thing. Now, that's not to say that he won't, because as I said this morning in the Morning View, check it out, is that sometimes the first part of the press conference is the most boring part of the press conference sometimes. You know, in the sense of this evening, the embargoed part, there will be more questions about Jadon Sancho. So maybe then they might get a bit more out of him. They might be able to sort of break down the defences, break the walls down, Chris Jericho style, when it comes to Ten Hag, and maybe get some kind of response. But so far, nothing. And his focus and his mindset, I guess, really, when it comes to it, is squad's good. Squad's good. Good spirits. Good mood. We're happy. We felt we did well against Arsenal. We were unlucky against Arsenal. We've done our analysis. Everyone's come back. Haven't picked up any injuries off the international break. So we're good. We're feeling positive. No problem. Good. And I can already see people starting to put in the Ronan Keating references in the chat. You know me. I mean, the puns are just tremendous. TJ says, life's like a roller coaster at United. Just got to ride it, you know. That's true. I mean, if anyone else wants to start continuing that, that's good, you know. So, yeah. I know what the UV community is like as well, because I know once we get that kind of pun sickness, that's going to continue out throughout the entirety of the stream. It's tremendous. John Doe says, Owen's taste in music is similar to my nan's. I never said I was a Ronan Keating fan. I'm just a man of culture, okay? Yeah, you say it best when you say nothing at all. Sometimes the mind takes different directions in these press conference streams. The presser. Yeah, that's what it is. Luxhill says, I'm 23, who's Ronan Keating? Well, it's just a disgrace, really, isn't it? Mods, ban Luxhill, get rid of him. Out of the chat now. Awful. 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 So, he said, as I mentioned, that the squad was in good spirits and a good mood going into the game against Brighton. But then there was pushback on that as well, because they said, I think this was still Simon Stone said to Erik ten Hag, Luxhill says, how can I be banned as a mod? There's always a way. There's always a way. I'll move on. The question says, Ten Hag said, the squad is strong, good spirits, and a good mood going into the game. Now, they pushed back on that, said, with all due respect, Eric, it doesn't feel like there's a good mood. You've got the situation with Jadon Antony, how can the squad be good? And Ten Hag pushed back on that, said they are good. They are good. He said sometimes you have setbacks in seasons, players are injured, or for other reasons they aren't available, so you construct a squad. The squad is very good, and the players who are available are motivated to give good performances. The problem is now that we kind of find ourselves in, isn't it, is that there will be people reading into everything he says now, potentially, because is that a dig? Is that a dig against Jadon Sancho? Is that a dig? Because where he says the squad is very good, the players who are available are motivated to give a good performance. So, and that's when you get into the territory of, so are you saying that the players who aren't available aren't motivated? Is that what you're saying? Those people that, are sitting on the sidelines at the moment, Sancho isn't motivated to give a good performance? I don't think there's too much to read into it. I think he's just trying to come out of this, really a horror show of a 10-day period, from a PR perspective for Man United, and all of the discourse and all of the drama and all of the BS surrounding the team, in the media, and all that kind of stuff, with the dynamics in the dressing room. I think the objective for Erik ten Hag, to be honest, in this press conference today would have just been, let's give everyone a lift. Let's try and be positive. Let's try and give off the perception that everything's fine, even if it is kind of the meme of the dog sitting there with the fire surrounding him when you say everything's fine, clearly it's not. He's sort of trying to put on a brave face and says, look, squad's good, players are good, players are motivated, players are happy, we're ready, we feel like we're in a good place, and we're ready to go. Obviously, if you got him privately, he'd be like, well, of course things aren't perfect. You've got Antony. We don't know when he's going to be back. We'll get to that later on. Jadon Sancho, he's training on his own. He's using the academy setup. He's nowhere near the first team, and we're not talking at this point. We've got a plethora of injuries, which we've got a bit of an update on that later on. And, and the ownership situation above us is a complete shambles and a farce anyway. So, of course, it's not an ideal situation, but his narrative, or his focus, certainly coming out of this press conference, is everyone that we've got available for tomorrow, they're ready and they're good to go, and we feel like we're making progress. We feel like the last performance against Arsenal was an indication that we're making progress. Ultimately, really, progress will be judged on wins, won't it? Progress will be judged on not only, for instance, if we win against Brighton tomorrow, that will be seen as, right, okay, silenced a bit of doubters there, got a bit of calm going. But really what people are looking for, they're looking for that big away win. If we could do, which I don't think we can at this point, if we went away to Bayern Munich and won, you'd go, right, okay, that silenced a lot of doubters. Go away from home against the top 6 sides, win that game. Again, sort of close that chapter, that narrative. So he's trying to put a brave face on it. That's the indication I got from it. He was very much being bullish, not talking about any of the drama surrounding United at the moment, and just trying to be positive. That's it. Here we go. Bro, Man United's performance against Arsenal was really bad. This is where I disagree. And I know people, will say, well, we were rubbish that game. But I didn't think so. I didn't think it was. Again, for me, I came out of that Arsenal game obviously really disappointed in the manner of which we lost. But I think, and it might be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer-esque to say fine margins, but it was fine margins. It was. And I'm not even just talking about, obviously, the offside goal. But we played a lot better in comparison to games earlier on in the season that we won as well. After that Spurs game away from home, I just thought, because I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything that I could take out of that game and go, I feel like we're heading in the right direction, or we look dangerous. At the end of that Arsenal game, there were things that I could pinpoint and say, okay, that looked better, that looked better, that looked better. And then also I took an extra step back and said, the injuries and absences that we've got, when we do have the ability to play our strongest side, or nearer to our strongest side, I think we'll be fine. And I've stuck with that. And even tomorrow, if it doesn't go well tomorrow, I would still say, look, we've still got people to come back. I hope we'll be better tomorrow, and I think we will be better tomorrow. And that Man United side should be able to beat Brighton at home. I know that Brighton are very, very good, and it's going to be a tough game, don't get me wrong, and Brighton have the ability to turn over anyone. on any patch, whether it be home or away, and it's going to be a tough one. But let's face it, if we want to qualify for the Champions League, or we want to progress on what we did last season, you've got to beat Brighton at home. That's what you've got to do. So, according to Ten Hag, we're ready. Now, speaking of ready, players that are ready to play tomorrow, Victor Lindelof, yes, he is available, which wasn't too much of a surprise considering that the reason Lindelof came off against Arsenal reportedly was because of illness. He had been ill going into the game. He'd played throughout the international break, so that one wasn't too much of a surprise. The really, I guess, important one, Lisandro Martinez, fit and ready to play. Big news. Big news, that one. Big trouble. Big news. Big team news, which is positive. I still have, there's something deep in my gut that is worrying about Lisandro Martinez at the moment. I'm not going to lie to you, because when he came off against Arsenal, it was almost a bit similar to how he came off against Wolves. And granted, you could say, that was just because of a yellow card, but I think it was Varane, had said that he had felt some discomfort in his foot during that time, and he went on the international break with Argentina. He didn't play in any of the games, but he did train. So I have this worry that maybe still something isn't totally right, maybe with his foot after having that surgery, or there's just an element of discomfort. But at the same time, in those games too, he's flown himself into tackles. You know, he's thrown himself into tackles, and maybe that's part of it too. But the fact that he's ready to play tomorrow would suggest that it's Lindelof, Martinez, centre-back, and that is much more reassuring. And you look at that and you go, right, back four, most likely, one would think, would probably be Wan-Bissaka right back, Leacher and Lindelof at centre-back, and Dalot at left-back, probably. And you're quite comfortable with that. And I think that reassures everyone as well, because you don't get to the point of having them Maguire and Evans possibly as a centre-back partnership. So coming out of that Arsenal game when it really felt like doom and gloom of, oh my God, are Lindelof and Martinez going to be out for a prolonged period of time? Are we going to have to play Evans and Maguire centre-back? That doesn't look to be the case now. So again, that's a real positive, absolutely. So Martinez and Lindelof available. A couple of people that aren't available, Mason Mount, no. Raphael Varane, no. Although Erik ten Hag did say they're both in a good place. They should be available to return shortly. It had been reported that Mount was kind of eyeing up the Bayern Munich game to be available for. It looks like maybe Raphael Varane also might be eyeing up that game, so they could be available in the very close future, which is positive. Surprisingly, and I guess we'll have to wait until the embargoed part of the press conference, surprisingly, no one asked about Sofiane Amrabat. I thought they would. I thought they would, considering that was also a story throughout the international break, but they didn't ask. They didn't ask about Sofiane Amrabat. So I'm assuming, again, that question would have been asked in the embargoed part. We'll wait and see what the answer is to that. Reports have suggested that United were optimistic he would be available. I don't suspect he'll start probably anyway tomorrow, but he might be on the bench. Luxil says, Owen, they probably wouldn't clear him if there was anything serious to worry about. Obviously, look, I'm not a doctor here. I'm not a physician. Although, frankly, with the amount of injuries we've got, I don't know how I could do any worse with what's been going on at United in terms of the injuries this season. The doctor from Arsenal actually is just, has he just started or is he starting next week? I think. I'm not sure. But I don't know. There's just, we have seen that with other players in the past, and even then, they were cleared, and then they felt discomfort because you never know until you're on the pitch, and you never know sometimes until you have a bit of contact. You never know until you kick a ball or anything like that, and it might be a case of, look, put it this way: if he starts tomorrow and we have a similar situation where he comes off again, you go, there's something not right going on with his foot post surgery, but. Maybe I am being too worried about it as well. B Cobra says, "What? Owen is not a doctor." Yep. Love says, "So you're saying you work at a GP, Owen?" Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm glad that's become a thing here on the in the UV community, because it's one of my biggest bugbears when people do that, and it happens so much when you say one thing, so people just go, "So you're saying the opposite?" No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the opposite. Exactly. What else are people saying about? Oh, Højlund. No questions about Rasmus Højlund either. So again, that's not to say that they haven't yet. That might come out later today. But in this one as well, No questions about Amrabat. No questions about Rasmus Højlund. So if you're looking for an update on that, don't really have one for you. We've got nearly 1,000 people watching. How many likes are we currently on at the moment? We're currently at 140. Well, as one Just Josh Media Graphics Guru Visual Ninja would say, well. If you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well, on the road to 153k. Let me put a poll in the chat as well. It's not really... Actually, I should do a poll that's a bit like, how would you judge the press conference? You know, do you think Ten Hag did good or bad or something like that? Maybe. Or how would you rate? There you go. How would you rate that press conference? Or what's the better question? How would you rate the press conference, or how would you rate Ten Hag's performance in the press conference, or Ten Hag's handling? I think Ten Hag's performance, because the press conference is about Ten Hag, isn't it? You know, that's what it's about. How would you rate Ten Hag's performance? Handling of the presser. There you go. Big up, Rich. How would you rate Ten Hag's handling? It'd be good if I could spout handling of the press conference, and then it's simply going to be a thumb up or a thumb down. That's it. Very simple. But it's going to be a very simple poll. Nothing too complex. Nothing too bad. I'm sure there'll be people saying, "What about thumbs in the middle?" We're not doing thumbs in the middle. We're not. That's not what we're doing. Thumbs up, thumb down. How would you rate Ten Hag's handling of the press conference? Poll is in the chat. There you go. Polls in the chat. What was the next question? I've been completely sidetracked, as always. Next question was, yes, it was about Harry Maguire. Now, the question was, with all of the discourse surrounding Harry Maguire this week, his mother has even spoken out about the criticism towards him. What are your thoughts and on what's been said, on the criticism, etc.? And Erik ten Hag said, I have said it many times. It is disrespectful. He doesn't deserve it. He is a great player, gives great performances. It is crazy, but it's how it works. Harry has to block this. And then was asked a follow-up question to that, saying, Harry said he's able to cope. How do you see him dealing with that? And Ten Hag said he has to block this. You see his career, a lot to come. He has to block it by good performances. Now, what I would say about that is I do agree with what he is saying. I do agree with what he's saying at the end of that, whereby the only way that Harry Maguire at this point can block the criticism. He can't do it by leaving United because he can't physically leave now. He should have left in the summer, by the way. Let's make that clear. But as of right now, the only thing he can do is when he plays, play well. The problem is he's not going to play because he is so far down the pecking order at Manchester United. I think if Erik ten Hag was being honest in that response, he would probably have said, should have left. Make no mistake, and this is the thing with all of this, with the Maguire stuff, is I agree with what Erik ten Hag is saying, is that sometimes there's this fine line when it comes to social media and sort of football and criticism and stuff like that, where on one side of it, you've got all of this criticism of Harry Maguire, his performances, his inclusion in the England squad, why he was the Man United captain in the first place, his leadership capabilities when he was the Manchester United captain. And all of that, I think, is perfectly fair game, perfectly valid, and, and was fair. It was fair. People wouldn't be criticising Harry Maguire if when he was the Man United captain, he was regularly playing well, he was coming across like a leader, he was putting in excellent performances. And I know that people will say, yeah, but he was, and when he does put in good performances, he still gets criticised. The reason Harry Maguire, even if he put in a half-decent performance, would get criticised is because it was never for a prolonged period of time. He just wasn't. And he had, again, no business being the Manchester United captain. It wasn't working out, and he became a problem. It became a problem, and he's on a big wage too. The problem is that then people step over that line and it just becomes personal attacks that have nothing to do with football anymore. It's into, he's got a stupid head and look at his face and, the stuff, like I said, he had bomb threats to his house. At that point, he's got a family. He's got that point. It's got nothing to do with football anymore, does it? So when it comes to that, of course, it's way over the line. But I do look at someone like Gareth Southgate when he came out and did that rant. I spoke about it the other day. That Gareth Southgate's part of the problem when it comes to that as well. He shouldn't keep picking a player that isn't playing for his club, and even when he was playing for his club, wasn't playing well. Just based off the thing of why he hasn't let me down in the past. Football is what have you done for me lately kind of situation, especially international football as well. Especially when you have other players in that position that were playing regularly, that were playing well, and Harry Maguire would play over them. So I think that, but also to suggest that Harry Maguire has had it the worst that any player has ever had it is just not true. That is just revisionist history. I remember after the World Cup in '98 with David Beckham and getting sent off, he'd come back. People were like burning effigies of him and doing all sorts of stuff. Some of the stuff written in the media about him was awful. I mean, absolutely terrible. And that's not to say it's a competition, because I hate doing the comparison thing of this person had it worse than that person, because it's not a competition. But they've got to stop trying to suggesting that this is a completely unique case that's never happened before in the face of football, because that's just revisionist history. That's just not true. It's just not. What should have happened in the summer was, and it's true, what should have happened this summer, Harry Maguire should have gone to West Ham. Had he gone to West Ham and he'd have played all of the games thus far this season, his inclusion in the England squad wouldn't have been disputed. You'd have said, well, Gareth Southgate's got his favourites, but look, Maguire's playing all of the time, and you'd fit in that team perfectly. Harry Maguire's not a terrible, terrible worst player ever, like people try and make him out to be as well. He's not that. He's a Premier League player, not a Man United player, but a Premier League player, and then that would have been fine. But I look at someone like Gareth Southgate and I say, you should have said to him in the summer, if you stay at Man United and you continue not to play, which, let's face it, that's what's going to happen unless there are injuries, because the idea of, well, there's a lot of games coming up, so I might be rotated in and out. You won't be. You've seen that last season. You've just played in games last season because they were the Europa League. The Champions League is a completely different kettle of fish. So you're not going to play games. If Gareth Southgate had said to him, look, I can't pick you, if you're not going to play, then I think, he'd have probably figured out that compensation situation and he'd be playing for West Ham right now. So that's why when he came out and did the interview afterwards, Harry Maguire, and said, I just want to play games, then why'd you stay at United? Because you're not going to play games? I mean, it's clear. I mean, Ten Hag, it's clear. You stripped you of the captaincy. Because you're not, and it wasn't, again, not because of a disciplinary issue as well, it's because you're not good enough to be the captain. That's it. And I think that Gareth Southgate, I clearly wasn't his intention, I don't think, but I don't think it's the smartest thing to do. He's just put more pressure on Harry Maguire as well. I think that, yes, some of it goes too far, as is always the case. As Ten Hag said, you've got to block that out, unfortunately. It's not right, but it's unfortunately the way of the world with social media. People behind faceless accounts or keyboards and think that for some reason they say these things to you and they think that you don't see them when obviously you're going to. You have to kind of find a way of blocking it out, not be on social media, have your team do it or whatever. But also, there's a lot of different culpable parties involved in that. It's not just, the media and the fans. It's, no, Gareth Southgate has a part to play in that. Harry Maguire himself has a part to play in that too. As Ten Hag said, you've got to block it by doing good performances, but I don't know when he's going to play to do those performances as well. Got a super chat here from Red Baron, says, fill me up for days. Also, there is a loud minority of United fans going after Ten Hag for being a disciplinarian. Hold that thought, Red Baron, because I'm going to come back to that, because he did talk about the strict lines, I believe was the phrase that was used as well. Because also, actually, speaking of the abuse thing as well, I was telling Flex the other day, I actually went to the first game that Cristiano Ronaldo played after the 2006 World Cup. Now, that game was not at Old Trafford. It was at the Kassam Stadium in Oxford. It was Manchester United versus Oxford in a pre-season friendly. And I was in the away end, and I saw Ronaldo that day, and everyone, of course, booed the hell out of him. The abuse he got was crazy. I went to the first home game after that as well. At the beginning of that season, we played Fulham. We won 5-1. And the United fans were clearly behind him. That's when I go back to, for me, once the player's on the pitch, you support them. That's why I say when it comes to Maguire, I don't get the whole, let's boo him if he plays. What does that achieve? Maguire's not going anywhere until January at this point. He's just not. So I don't really link into that. But the idea that is, nobody's, I think was Southgate's quote, nobody's ever got this level of things that Maguire's got. It's just not true. It's just not. Next question was from Samuel Lucas from the Manchester Evening News, and it was, do you feel like a father figure to some of the players in how you have to sort of manage them? And Ten Hag said it is also with the generation about team construction, the group dynamic, and always about the team. That is above everything else, but within that, everyone plays his role. Different characters, you have to manage those characters. It is always about the team. The team is above everything else. There are a lot of different personalities, and you have to manage them. The team is always above everything else. Now, actually, I will say what the next question was, because this kind of brings into one here. So the follow-up question to that was, can you have a strict line? Do you have to have a strict line, or are there others that you give a bit more leeway to? I think Samuel Lucas was maybe trying to needle in a little bit the sort of reports that maybe Jadon Sancho believes there's a double standard for him in comparison to other players. So the question was, do you always have just a firm, strict line, or do you stick to that, or do you give leeway to others based on themselves or whatever? And Ten Hag said, and this was the fantastic answer. This was, I think, the answer to the press conference. He said, quote, strict lines is what the club asked me because there was no good culture before last season. So to set good standards, that is what I did. It is my job to control the standards. If staff, players, or whoever cross those lines, you have to be strong. Absolutely. And I completely agree with what he is saying there. Completely agree. One, it's the team above everything else. There can't be any individuals. I know that you could say, well, in Sir Alex's time they had Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever. We look at that team. Are there any Cristiano Ronaldo-esque level players in that team? Best in the world players? No. At the moment, the team, the collective is always the most important thing. And the second part is where he is exactly right. And this is what kind of baffles me with some of the responses that I've seen about the Jadon Sancho stuff over the last 24, 48 hours, is that some people are calling for Erik ten Hag's head, or criticizing Erik ten Hag for being firm with this group of players that just 18 months ago or 2 years ago ran amok. And we criticized the club and the players for running amok, for it being player FC, for the players being bigger than the manager. What this club needs is discipline and standard, and it needs strictness. It needs someone to come in and get rid of people that aren't falling in line. Fast forward 18 months later, a couple of players step out of line, and we're criticizing the manager for being too firm or being too much. Are you kidding me? Like, that is the definition of insanity. We're doing it again. We're doing the same thing again. And it's not to say that great managers don't have discipline problems. And great managers, of course, they do. People have discipline issues in the squad, but it's how they deal with them. And as Ten Hag said, like, I go back to that time because I remember doing these kind of press conferences. I remember doing these streams, or doing full views, or doing shows upon shows about leaks, about this, about that, about this player coming out, that player coming out, this player not liking that player, this player being angry with the coaching staff, this, that, and the other. And it was just a total mess. And that doesn't get fixed overnight. And there are always going to be those personalities that maybe are difficult to deal with. But the important thing is that you do deal with them, or if they don't fall in line, they go. And that's it. You look at people like, and I hate having to compare yourself to someone like an Arsenal, but look at those sort of characters, those more experienced names that, Arteta clashed with. They're doing all right at the moment. They did well last season. Look at people like, even at Brighton, De Zerbi, people he fell out with. They're gone. Get rid of them. No problem. No one is bigger than the team. No one is bigger than the manager. And it kind of baffles me that we're having to kind of sort of explain that, because you can't, and it'd be another thing, right? If Jadon Sancho was like Ballon d'Or winner, the best player in the world, then you would go, look, it's a difficult situation because he's the best player in the world. But what has Sancho done at Manchester United thus far? What has he done? Not that much. What has he been doing recently? Not that much. And Player FC, it cannot thrive. It just cannot. So I think that he's right. You can't criticize him for the reason he was brought in, which was to bring discipline and bring strictness and bring up standards. Now, you could argue it's really difficult to bring up standards with what's going on above him, because that whole thing's a total mess. Unfortunately, I believe, like in my heart of hearts, that Erik ten Hag, or any manager for that matter, because we've seen it, always is operating with one hand tied behind their back. They're hamstrung with just how piss poor the club operates just a daily basis, let alone whether it be for transfers, whether it be just, upkeep of the training ground, of the stadium, investment, a will to actually win on the pitch. They're always operating with one arm tied behind their back. But as he says, it's the team above everything else. And a player isn't bigger than the club, and a player isn't bigger than the manager. And even if they have perceived gripes against the manager, it's kind of tough. That's it. Tough luck. You don't pick the team. The manager does. And maybe it will all, blow up in Ten Hag's face, but that's the sword he's going to fall on. And as he mentions, that's why he was brought in. He was brought in for that very reason, was to get a grip on some of those things. And you could argue as well that some of these issues, allegedly, when it comes to Jadon Sancho, have sort of predated him. We're like that when he came in, and he's tried to fix it, and maybe that's one issue he can't fix or won't fall in line, so Sancho will be gone. I think at this point, Sancho will be gone. I didn't think that a few days ago. I thought it was going to be a case of apology, move on. Jadon Sancho didn't want to apologise. Erik ten Hag didn't even mention Jadon Sancho's name in this press conference. So it looks like it's over, it's done. And the only thing that Ten Hag didn't do is kind of what De Zerbi did with Moises Caicedo in that press conference where he said, I've already forgotten about him, So I thought that was a top answer from Erik ten Hag there, really, about saying, well, that's why I was brought in, And that's why I don't really understand some of the criticism of Erik ten Hag through his handling of this, especially when people go, Ten Hag started it. How old are we? Are we all 5 years old? That is such a childish answer. He started it, or she started it. Well, it doesn't matter. It's how did you react to it? That parenting advice, isn't it? Of, why did you do that? Well, they started it. Come on. Really? Is that what we're really going with? And what's the end game? I don't get me wrong. Jadon Sancho's got a right to stand up for himself. Absolutely. But if he did this with a view of, I don't know, playing more often at United, never going to happen. If he did it with a view of leaving Manchester United, then that will work. But I don't. Like I said, some of the criticism, I don't get it. I really don't. Another super chat here from Red Baron says, David Gill, I believe you mean David Gil, according to one KG Da comedian, was really important as well. Yes, the combination of Sir Alex and David Gill was very important. David Gil, obviously, he would make the signing of Sergio Reguilon, according to KG as well. Reguilon still is one of my favourite ones. And the problem is, when I'm reading David Gill there, I'm having to really overthink it and everything in my power to not say David Gil, because it's kind of looped into my head at this point. Let's say with Reguilon is really in my head at the moment. Well, actually, there was two. Because if you go back and watch the clip, United View clips, check it out. Links to the video description. Over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to everyone that has subscribed. With the Reguilon clip, there's actually two. There's two pronunciations that he says in it. He says Reguilon, and then he says Reguilon. God, KG, you're making me choke. He is something else. He is something else. And he's on the match view tomorrow, KG the comedian. Be sure to join everyone. When is that? That's 2:30, 30 minutes before kickoff. So be sure to join everyone inside UV HQ tomorrow. Obviously, there's going to be full-time view afterwards. I'll be here. If you're a member, you can call in. If you're not, you can watch. You can have your say in the live chat as well. And he's hoping we're talking about a good result as well. I don't have any confirmation, PJ, if KG is going to be, if he's going to be in the studio with the vest on. Probably not. I lean to probably not. It's, we're getting into sort of autumn now, heading into winter, which is my favourite time of the year, but it's an unlikely time. It's an unlikely time to have the vest on from KG the comedian, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know if that one's going to happen. Final couple of questions here. Was from Samuel Luckhurst again about Brighton, of course. Brighton was Erik ten Hag's first game at home. So what's the difference between the United squad and team between then and now? And he said, we had 2 great games in the spring against them, and we know we have to play tomorrow to our best because they will sacrifice and suffer because it gives you a lot of options. So really looking forward. And to be honest, with all of the stuff going on and all of the drama that's happened over the last 10 days, I was saying to Flex this morning, I hadn't even really thought about the game. Really, I hadn't thought that much about it until maybe today. I thought, oh, that's a big game. that's a really tough game. And I don't know. How is everybody feeling about it at the moment? I think I maybe need to sleep on it once again. But I just genuinely don't know what to expect. And I think that's where I'm at with Manchester United at the moment. Is I don't know what to expect. The fact that it's at home, gives you positivity. It makes you feel like, I think we can get a good result. And it's one of those ones, isn't it, where, and I have to catch myself doing this quite a lot, where you go, Brighton, come on. And then you have to take a step back and go, oh, come on, we can beat Brighton at home. We could beat Brighton at home. It's a really tough game, but we beat, he beat Brighton, But it's a difficult one. It's a really challenging game. They don't care who they're facing, away from home, at home, not a problem. So it's going to be a challenging one. I just lean into, I think that because we're at home, we'll have just about enough, I think. I think we'll have just about enough to get over the line. If it was away at the Amex, I'd be leaning towards, I think we're going to, lose quite convincingly. But realistically, as I sit here today, Friday the 15th of September, 2:43 p.m., who knows where it could go tomorrow? It could go in plenty of different directions. We play well, we win. We play well, we lose. We could get smashed. Let's be honest, come out of the game, lose 3-0. Would we be totally shocked? But I'm feeling more optimistic because I think that Højlund will start. I'm more confident knowing that Leach is available, Lindelof's available, Amrabat will be on the bench, one would think. So I'm feeling a bit more optimistic with that, it must be said. I think we've got a bit more balance about us now too, and we've got more options. I'm more confident that if we get to half time and we'll go, man, that midfield is just getting overrun, it's not working, Amrabat off the bench, Eriksen off. Something like that. I'm more confident with that. Garnacho's, you probably will start on the bench for Kundo. Hope he starts. I do. And we've got players that are nearly back as well. Mount, Varane, and some others too. Kobbie Mainoo keeps teasing on Instagram that he's nearly back, or he's going to be back soon. So hopefully he'll be back as well. Finally, last couple of questions were regarding Antony in the press conference from Erik ten Hag. First question was to Ten Hag, how long is Antony going to be away from the club? Ten Hag said, I have no idea. And the follow-up question to that was, have you spoken to him? Is he okay? And Ten Hag said, of course, he is disappointed, but he is okay. So no real time scale or timeline update regarding Antony. Of course, if the club comes out and says anything regarding his future or anything like that, we'll let you know as we continue to have. But there you go, guys. That was the press conference. If you haven't already, click the like button. We still got nearly 900 people watching, just over 250 likes. We can go higher. Like Manchester United this season, we can go higher. So if you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe to If you haven't already, you can check out the preview. Yes, the preview. A Manchester United Brighton preview is there. It's a really good watch, actually. I think it's like 40 minutes. It's a really, really good watch ahead of tomorrow's game. So be sure to check that out. Check out the morning view with Flex and myself if you haven't already too. Then tomorrow, what's on tap? Well, full match day experience. We're back. Premier League's back. So you'll have the road trip. You'll have, obviously, the match view, the fan views, full-time view with myself, and everything that happens in between. Of course, if anything does happen, breaks or another statement between now and then, of course, we'll be here and we'll be covering all of that as well. If not, I will speak with you tomorrow, and here's hoping we get a positive result. I'm out of it. Have a good one. Peace.